mistake. Okay, Mr. Timer, please start over. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, Mr. President, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests. I'd like to start by asking you to think back to where you were when you started Toastmasters and where you wanted to get to. In other words, your starting point and your final destination. I want to share with you my own personal journey in Toastmasters because I think it illustrates some tips that I can give you that may help you get the most out of Toastmasters. I joined Toastmasters in order to be able to speak up at meetings. That's a pretty typical goal. However, my starting point was atypical. I'm a shy introvert by nature. I grew up with childhood abuse, racism, harassment and bullying, and I had ADHD that was not diagnosed until 2 years ago. My coping method of choice was to become invisible. I simply stopped speaking. I went through high school and university basically without opening my mouth. I even did a doctorate at Harvard in Second Temple Jewish literature. Sure, we had to give seminar papers now and then. I would print up a 50-page paper, read it word for word, and pray that no one had any questions. Afterwards, I worked in the Dead Sea Scrolls at the Hebrew University, but that was okay because we all had terrible communication skills. However, in 2001, I moved to high tech. I worked first as a technical writer and then as an engineer. And let me tell you, if you are a petite Japanese woman who doesn't open your mouth, you are totally invisible. I had about as much influence as a houseplant. I was not considered promotable. I was paid significantly less than my coworkers. And guess what? You know those bullies from school? Many of them grew up and became managers. They're still in the woodwork. That's what brought me to Toastmasters, and that's where I started. And my coping mechanism of not opening my mouth had turned into a full-blown phobia. I'd like to say Toastmasters changed my life immediately, but I have to be honest, I hated it. Ilana, I really feel for you. I know what it's like to want to quit every single meeting. I dug in my heels. I refused to speak. Daniel had to prod me and push me for every speech. After about 6 months, however, the penny dropped, and I suddenly realized I was not going to become a better speaker by watching other people become better speakers. I turned my attitude around 180 degrees, and even though I was terrified, I signed up for roles. I volunteered. I gave speeches, lots of speeches, terrible speeches. Every time a speech bombed, I'd sign up for another speech because you're only as bad as your last speech. And let me tell you what happened. After a year and a half, the fear disappeared. It was like I woke up one day and discovered that the fear that had been paralyzing me for decades was gone. That was huge. That's why my first tip to you, whether you're starting Toastmasters or have been involved for a while, is to participate. Grab every opportunity. Many of you may not have problems as severe as mine, but I can tell you that the minutes that you spend working on your skills, developing styles, experimenting, all those minutes will pay up and you'll become a more polished speaker and really jumpstart your progress. My second tip for you is pathways. Do it conscientiously. I used to click my way through pathways and think of it as just another boring thing to get through. But if you don't do pathways, you're not going to get out of your comfort zone. You're not going to learn and grow. Pathways has the beauty of being able to give you specific projects to work on. I just realized we have some people here who are new to Toastmasters. Pathways is the educational program that you work through when you become a Toastmaster. And some of the materials are really good. Vocal variety. I'd never shouted at an audience until I did the vocal variety project. Body language, dealing with a difficult audience, monitoring a panel discussion. There are so many things that you could learn from Pathways, but you have to really focus on it. And the third tip I have is take your skills outside the club. Remember, you did not join Toastmasters to become a better Toastmaster. I have a feeling you probably joined it in order to improve other areas of your life. In 2017, I was laid off by Cisco and I was hired by Red Hat. I had a clean slate to start with. About a year after I started, I began volunteering for high-profile projects that required me to give status reports at big program meetings with engineers and managers. In summer of 2019, I gave a presentation in the Czech Republic on work-life balance. Believe it or not, I'm still being asked to give that presentation to other groups. I started to mentor some of my coworkers. There were others who were terrified of speaking, and I was a practice audience and gave them tips. Now, I only did this in order to consolidate my own skills, but I was noticed by management. I got several raises, 2 promotions, 2 equity grants, and I went from being invisible Avital to being considered a leader and a role model. I mean, what a flip in my life. To go back to where I started, I want you to think again about where you're starting and where you want to end up. If you're a little bit confused about how you're going to get from point A to point B, I'm giving you the same advice I would have given myself 5 years ago if I had known. Participate as much as you can in the meetings. Take advantage of all those educational opportunities that you have through Toastmasters, and take your skills outside the community. Go to your volunteer organizations, mentor someone who needs help. Believe me, you will consolidate your skills and you will help other people as well. Toastmasters has been an incredible journey for me, and I can't say how much it has opened up horizons that I never dreamed of. I hope that your journey is every bit as exciting, and I hope that as VPE of this club that I'm there to be part of it. I wish you good luck. Mr. Timer, can you please tell me how much time we have for the question and answer period?
We have 13 minutes for the question and answers. Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Timer. Before we start, I want to reiterate that since we only have 13 minutes, you are welcome to send me your questions in the email that I wrote in chat, or if you have a question that you don't really want to discuss in this forum. Also, as Daniel mentioned, several of us like to hang out after the meeting, and you are welcome to join us. So now I opened it up to questions. Any questions about pathways, Toastmasters, ADHD, stage fright? By the way, since I can't see all of you, perhaps somebody will be able to act as an eye to see if anyone has a question. Or you can just unmute yourself.
I'll ask you a question. Hi, it's Costa here from the UK. Hi, thanks. Very inspiring, very interesting speech. Have you thought about taking the speech on the road? So Zoom to a lot of other clubs. I think I'd like to invite you to come and speak to our club if you'd like to do that.
Costa, I must admit I've never expected to be asked to present a speech at another club. I would be delighted. Please get in touch with me after the meeting. This is quite unexpected. Thank you. I'm very flattered.
Welcome. Thank you.
Bonnie.
I can continue on that, and since I'm a program quality director, I'm responsible for encouraging people to join Pathways. Can you provide a little bit more information of what you would say to a new member on what Pathways will do for them?
Pathways is a very structured system of going through levels and projects. There are 16, I believe 16 or 18 different paths, which means that you can choose paths that suit your goals. For example, presentation mastery, visionary communication, planning, coaching. And once you start a path, your first level is fairly standard. You will give an icebreaker speech, and then you have a couple evaluation and feedback speeches, followed by research and presenting. In your second level, you will often explore communication styles and leadership styles. The third level is really fun. In fact, we have one member who's enjoying herself so much in level 3 for the electives that she never wants to leave it. Yes, Ilana, because there you get to do projects like creating a podcast, storytelling, dramatic reading. There are really some very interesting projects there. The fourth level is more advanced, and this is a level 4 project where you have to speak for longer periods and interact more with the audience. You also might have a project like moderating a panel discussion. And in the 5th level, you will have more advanced projects that may include speaking, but also projects outside Toastmasters that you will then present within your Toastmasters club. Is there anything you'd like to add, Bonnie? Does that answer your question?
Thank you, and I'll probably be in touch with you later to maybe have you come and visit District 36 as well.
Well, thank you very much. I'm not making up that 5 years ago, I could never have given that speech.
Avital?
Who is this?
Hi, it's Lisa.
Lisa.
Hi. I had a question. So for Toastmasters, there's the speech given to maybe 20 people at once. It's a larger group. And I'm curious, in the work environment, there can be the one-on-one interactions with a boss, or maybe a small group of 2 or 3 coworkers. I'm curious how, in speaking with a large group, what are the skills that you found translate really well to a more intimate conversation, maybe one-on-one with someone? I'm curious how that translation happens and your thoughts on that.
Actually, I have a very apt story that many of my club members have heard. I was bullied twice by 2 managers. The first time I was before Toastmasters, and I put up with it for 8 months. I mean, I went to HR, I submitted complaints and did everything you're supposed to, but it didn't stop. And all I did was do my invisibility act and hope that it would stop. But it didn't, because bullies don't quit. After Toastmasters, another manager tried to bully me. I recognized the signs, and I knew I had to stop it. So on the 3rd day, when he was still continuing, and I knew he wasn't just having a bad day, we were having a one-on-one in a closed meeting, and he started to get abusive and accuse me of things and tell me that I was a screw-up and making too many mistakes, which I wasn't. I was terrified inside, but I used my Toastmasters training to look him in the eye. Believe me, when you're as shy as I am, you have a hard time looking people in the eye, controlling my voice and saying, "This meeting is over. We'll continue when you can speak to me civilly." And I got up and left the room. He said to me, "Avital, sit down." And I repeated, "This meeting is over. We can continue when you can speak to me civilly." It stopped the bullying. I was terrified. I was shaking. I knew he would get me fired. And indeed, I was laid off 2 months later. But I was able to act confident even though I was shaking inside. I would say that's one of the biggest pluses that I learned from Toastmasters, and that you can use when people are pushing you around in any setting at work.
Amazing.
You can look more confident. And in fact, they often say that it's the confidence factor that is responsible for the glass ceiling for many women who are trying to get advanced positions. That if you look like you lack confidence, you will have a hard time convincing other people that you are truly competent. That's a big plus that you can gain from Toastmasters. Mr. Timer, are we almost out of time because I have my own timer running? How are we doing?
We're doing pretty good. I actually paused it for a second after the 7 minutes, but I'm only on 6 minutes now, so we're pretty good.
Okay, no problem. We have time for more questions.
I have a question.
Laura.
Laura, yes. Hi. It's regarding stage fright, and my question is, do you have different types of stage frights, or had, depending on the size of the group or the environment of the group? Do you still have some left? For example, if you're presenting in a hall or in front of a group of 20 to 40 people, would you have less stage fright than presenting in front of 6 people or 7 people?
I'm sorry, I think your video froze. Is it just me?
Hello?
Okay, sorry, I lost the signal for a second. My internet connection is unstable.
Okay, I'll repeat the question.
So you were asking me whether I have different tips for overcoming stage fright when I
do you have different types?
Audiences?
Types. So, for
Different
example, would you have more or less stage fright in front of a large group, say 20 to 40 people, right, or as compared to a small group of 6 or 7 people? And saying one of in a conference room environment and different in a more of a hallway?
Yes, I would, but I would say that I don't think it has so much to do with numbers as it has to do with my general comfort with the environment. If it's people I don't know, then yes, it is harder. If I'm in an unfamiliar environment, like when I was speaking in the Czech Republic, my laptop stand was at the other end of the room and it was enormous. I had to give an entire speech, 15 minutes, well, a presentation without notes, and make eye contact with people in a very weird seating arrangement. But I don't really consider that stage fright. It's more like a challenge. Once I got over being scared, I found that the numbers didn't make such a big difference. It did mean, though, that when I prepared for a more important presentation or occasion, I prepared more carefully. That's certainly true. I would spend a lot more time checking out what I was wearing, making sure I have my water, pen, notes, go to the bathroom several times before the meeting starts, that kind of thing. But in terms of fear, I think it's about the same now. I actually don't feel much fear. I'm really happy about that.
Avital, I have a question.
Yes, Ilana.
So for the last 9 months or so, we've been having meetings over Zoom. And I remember at first I thought, oh, I just can't wait till we go back to having real meetings. And eventually we had to get used to these being our real meetings, at least for a while. I'm wondering how much you think, or in what way you think, the skills we're getting here on Zoom translate to a real life situation. Because hopefully we will return eventually to real life situations, and I'm wondering if what we're doing over Zoom really gives us practice.
I think that our skills will definitely count because the world has changed. We have discovered that we can do so many things over Zoom that we never did before. And that's why I don't think the skills that we learn for example, raising our laptops, making eye contact with that little camera lens, I don't think that those are going to go to waste. We still have to be able to speak to live audiences. And when lockdown ends, hopefully we'll be able to do that. It's true that Zoom requires a very different set of skills. At the same time, those skills are not going to go to waste. If you've attended a lot of Zoom meetings, as many meetings as I do, then you know that there are some people who seem to think it's okay to do this in front of the camera or have the camera down somewhere around their belly. Zoom skills are their own category of communication skills. They're not going to be wasted. Video conferencing is here to stay. That's my prediction.
I have a question, Avital.
Max.
Have you gotten to the point where you said that you started out and you hated the idea of speaking? Have you gotten to the point where it's exhilarating or exciting for you to get up and speak?
Sometimes. There's always an edge of fear, but there's also exhilaration, and it is really encouraging to see how far I've come. If you look at our YouTube channel, at my old videos, those first speeches, I sounded like a chipmunk on steroids because I couldn't slow down. I was able to slow down over the years and to pace myself. I would say that, yes, I do sometimes get scared, but it's also exhilarating. And now I'm actually able to enjoy it instead of crawling off the stage, going back to my seat and saying, Daniel, I gave a terrible speech. I want to quit tomorrow. So that part has changed a great deal. I think we have time for one more question now that I see the yellow card. Or a quick question.
Quick question.
Menashe, yes.
Hi. So you talked about the different parts of pathways, and I've been in that, and I sort of cheated a little bit because there's now you can get a new free path when you renew your membership of the semester. But I've struggled that I got through 1 and 2 fine. I did my CC, then I got through 1 and 2 in the pathways, 3 and 4 fantastic. I love all those electives, and now I'm struggling with level 5. And I guess maybe you haven't really gotten there yourself, but maybe you can talk to that. It seems like, how do you jump into, particularly if you don't work for a big company, how do you, it's me and my evil twin, how do you jump into finding how to do these big collaborative projects that it seems to want to do?
I have done level 5. This is my second path. I admit that I chose my path very carefully, because anything that involves a project like building a hotel is not going to be suitable. That's why I did not choose paths that included a project that required a huge collaborative team. I would say you have to choose carefully, and sometimes you'll have to make up a project in your community. We can talk about this offline, and I'd be happy to give you advice if I get a little bit more information. At this point, I would like to wind down and thank you all very much for being such a wonderful participatory audience. You really took it to heart, participate. Now I turn the meeting over back to Mr. Toastmaster, Daniel.